Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a splendid new disc. Really interesting stuff by Michael Daugherty. Michael Daugherty, the American composer who writes pieces inspired by Americana. Mount Rushmore and Jackie O and all kinds of contemporary and older stuff. He's really a very, very fine composer. He has a good feel for the pulse of contemporary American music, I think. He can mix jazz and pop styles into his more, serious classical styles very deftly. He first came to notice with his Metropolis Symphony. Remember that? Based on the Superman comics. I remember the first time I saw that. It was with the American Composers Orchestra at Carnegie Hall. And I'd gone to see something else. I don't remember what else was on the program even, because this sort of obliterated it. And I thought, well, he said Metropolis Symphony. How long could it be? Well, it turned out to be monstrous. I mean, it's like 45, 50 minutes long. It was huge. And it was the first thing on the program. So I thought, well, naturally, it's going to be a little overture type thing, 6 minutes. And then I was like going on and on and on. But it's a wonderfully imaginative thing. And he's since gone on to do piles of this stuff. And he does it very well. He has a distinctive style, a real personal voice, which he has used to excellent effect, as he does here. Now, the big item on this particular disc is Blue Electra. Blue Electra is a violin concerto in 4 movements. It lasts 26 minutes and 21 seconds here. It was written for Akiko Meyers, who is a wonderful violinist. And she was an RCA artist for quite some time. You may remember then. And then, of course, all hell broke loose at the major labels. But she's still at the top of her game. And she's got the Albany Symphony under David Alan Miller, who played this music phenomenally well. David Alan Miller is a wonderful conductor of new music, particularly American music. And the piece is based on the life of Amelia Earhart, inspired by. I mean, the movements have titles: Courage, Paris, which is really kind of a scherzo-like, nightclubby thing, From an Airplane, and Last Flight. Now, the work is beautiful. It's beautifully written. The violin solo is well realized. It's balanced well against the orchestra. It sings, and Akiko Meyers plays magnificently. The orchestra sounds great. The sonics are terrific throughout this disc. Albany, the Troy Savings Bank Concert Hall, where the Albany Symphony plays, is a great concert hall for recording, as we know from like the George Lloyd symphonies and many other Albany Symphony recordings on the Albany label as well. It's really a lovely work. It was composed in 2022, and it really ought to enter the repertoire. I can't imagine it not being a real crowd pleaser of a piece. It has good tunes, and it's not programmatically tacky. It doesn't go splat, which you really don't want to hear in a piece like this. It's inspired by Earhart, who actually wrote poetry, and a couple of her poems provide the impetus for 2 of the movements at least. So it's a beautiful new work, and I enjoyed it very much, and you probably will too. And it's here on Naxos. Now, the next piece, Last Dance at the Surf. Well, the Surf is the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa. And it's the place where Buddy Holly and Richie Valens and the Big Bopper performed just before they got on a plane, which crashed immediately and killed all 3 of them. So it's a grotesque kind of story, but he doesn't make anything grotesque out of it. He takes it seriously, thank God. I mean, you have to take it seriously, but it's not an exploitive piece. There isn't a lot of maudlin stuff. And again, you don't hear the plane crash. It's like Amelia Earhart. You don't want to hear splat. You have another splat opportunity here, but it doesn't go splat. Fortunately, it's a dance piece. Daugherty calls it a dance symphony. It's 16 minutes long, and it's delightful. It would make a great concert opener. And it's the kind of thing that Daugherty does really, really well, because he really knows how to integrate pop and rock influences into more classical forms or classical orchestral music. And the form here is it's a dance suite. It's a sequence of dance things. And it's fun. It's just fun to listen to. It's beautiful. And if it has some more serious or meditative elements, then they work really well, as in contrast to the generally up-tempo beat of the rest of the work. Last but certainly not least, we have To the New World for orchestra. Well, this one isn't as good as the other two. It was written for the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, and it's for orchestra with soprano obbligato. Here, the extremely capable Elissa Johnston, she sings or she obligates, vocalizes quite well. It has certain elements from Neil Armstrong's life, which are kind of interesting. He was a euphonium player in his band days as a kid, and he was interested in the theremin, hence the soprano vocalese. I don't see why you just don't use a theremin. I mean, I guess it's easier to have a soprano than find a thereminist to go out and do it, but they exist. And he also loved the New World Symphony. Apparently, when he went to the moon, he had a cassette of Dvorak's New World Symphony with him, and so the Largo is quoted at the beginning of this thing, which actually is kind of curious because if you want to hear the inspiration of the Largo, listen to the first movement of Blue Electra, Courage, which sounds far more derivative of the New World Symphony than the couple of notes here or there that Daugherty plugs in to his first movement. Now, the first movement is prefaced with John F. Kennedy's, speech urging us to go to the moon. And the second movement has that one small step for a man, one giant step for mankind. And it's based on the rhythm of that phrase, which is spoken rhythmically multiple times by the soprano, which just irritated the crap out of me. It was gimmicky. Frankly, it's a bit gimmicky. And that's one thing that Daugherty at his best is not and can be rather easily because of the nature of the subject matter. The opening movement too sounds, kind of like a science fiction film score kind of thing. But it's fun. And the last movement, Splashdown, is terrific. It's another one of those up-tempo, exciting things that Daugherty's really, really good at writing. And throughout these pieces, he writes good tunes, affecting tunes. He can mix, atonality with tonality. He's eclectic and he's open to all kinds of influences, and he'll use whatever he needs to get the job done. And get the job done, they most certainly do. In this splendid recording featuring Akiko Meyers and the Albany Symphony with David Allen Miller on Naxos. And by the way, if you are tired of hearing my voice droning on, I also wrote a review, actual written review, over at classicstoday.com, which you can go and read as well, because I think this is an important release and it deserves the coverage in both media. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.